following program is brought to you in living color on NBC by Ford.
Ready? Ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, The Ford Show. Starring Tennessee Ernie Ford. Ernie Ford. Ernie Ford. Ernie Ford. Ernie Ford. Ernie Ford.
This has been a recorded announcement.
You're ahead in a Ford all the way. Little man, but they were all American. Washington and Old Bunyan and New Road and Tom Paine, Jefferson and Miles Standing, Franklin, Houston, Captain Ed, Hamilton, Jackson, Taylor.
Good evening. It's like they were saying. Those are names of some of the legendary figures in American history. Some are real, some we're not sure of. Some were just made up. But most of them have one thing in common. They had songs written about them, and tonight we're going to play a musical tribute to these men. Take a look at our little tree here. Now, these are some of the symbols of these men we talk about. Here's the old railroad lantern. That could be about the famous engineer, Casey Jones. Here's the kite, and the key, and the tail. I bet that was flown by old Ben Franklin himself. And up here, there's a symbol that was used quite a bit. Some of them we didn't hear about. Some of them were famous, like Tom Dooley and a few of them. We know that this rail spike driving hammer had to belong to John Henry. There's a piece of cotton here about Eli Whitney and the song, "Keep Your Cotton Picking Hands Off of My Gin." And the famous coonskin cap had to be worn by none other than Davy Crockett. He was a great hero and a man loved by everybody, except the raccoons that had to give up their hides and their tails to make his hats. If you don't happen to remember all the things Davy Crockett did, I think this song will refresh your memory.
Davy Crockett was his name.
Born on a mountaintop in Tennessee, great estate in the land of the free, raised in the woods so's he knew every tree, killed him a bar when he was only 3.
Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier.
Now he lost his love and his grief was gall. In his heart he wanted to leave it all and lose himself in the forest tall, but he answered instead his country's call.
Davy Crockett, in his campaign.
He went off to Congress and served a spell, fixing up the government and laws as well. Took over Washington, so we hear tell, and patched up a crack in the Liberty Bell.
Davy Crockett, seen his beauty clear.
When he come home, his politicking done. The Western March had just begun, so he packed his gear and his trusty gun and lit out a grinning to follow the sun. His land is the biggest, his land is the best. From grassy plain to the mountain crest, he's ahead of us all, meeting the test, following his legend into the West. Davy Crockett,
King of the wild frontier.
Storybooks tell they were all cut low, but the truth of it is this just ain't so. Their spirits will live and their legends grow as long as they remember the Alamo. Davy Crockett,
Crockett's company.
Davy Crockett,
Fighting for liberty.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, thank you so much. I guess songs have always been used to record the deeds and legends of colorful people. And probably 100 years from now, they'll be singing songs about some of the famous people that are living today. Well, for example, let's see. Now, they might be singing something like this. A mob of yelling people came and battered down his door and tore off the blue suede shoes that poor old Elvis wore. Well, now, it could happen. Now, or perhaps a song like this. Oh, I came from merry England with the banjo on my knee, and I'm going to the White House, my brother-in-law to see. Peter Lawford and his friend old Skinny Frank, they're going to pay the debt of the Democratic Bank. Well, it could happen, you know. Yeah, they might be singing songs like that. Of course, back in the old days of the West, you didn't have to be a hero or a famous person to have a song written about you. For instance, a song like this one tells a story of a Mr. Grayson, a beautiful woman, and a condemned man. See if you remember. Met her on the mountain, there I took her life. Met her on Black Mountain, stuck her with a knife. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley, hang down your head and cry. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Poor boy, you're bound to die. Yes. This time tomorrow, reckon where I'll be. If it hadn't been for Grayson, I'd have been in Tennessee. This time tomorrow, reckon where I'll be. Down in some lonesome holler, hanging from a black oak tree. Well, now, hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Hang down your poor old head and cry. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Poor boy, you're bound to die. Poor boy, you're bound to die. Poor boy, you're bound to die. Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, if George Washington was the father of our country, Benjamin Franklin was his favorite uncle. You know, about 200 years ago, he wrote a book called Poor Richard's Almanac. That man did a lot of things. I got a copy of it out at the public library. Now, you know, these things could hold just as true today as they did when he wrote this thing 200 years ago. Here's some of them. Listen to them. There are 3 faithful friends, an old wife, an old dog, and ready money. Now, Ben wrote that. He did. Listen to this. 1 good husband is worth 2 good wives. For the scarcer things are, the more they're valued. Here is a dandy. Fish and visitors stink after 3 days. Oh, that man had a head full of sense, didn't he? Let thy maidservant be faithful, strong, and homely. Well, here's one. Tim was so learned that he could name a horse in 9 languages, but so ignorant that he bought a cow to ride on. Now, these are some of his more humorous things, but he also said many serious things which have grown truer with the years. We're starting a new year now, a new administration, and here's one I think could well be the motto for both. Sell not virtue to purchase wealth, nor liberty to purchase power. Well, I guess I've talked enough about Ben Franklin. Here are the lovely ladies of the top 20 to sing about him.
Ben Franklin munched a loaf of bread while walking down the street, and all the Philadelphia girls, they laughed to see him eat. Come along, along, we'll sing a song, and it isn't very long. Ben Franklin was the gentleman's name, and he made this country strong. Ben Franklin wrote an almanac, a smile upon his lip. It told you when to plant your corn and how to cure the pip. But he salted it and seasoned it with proverbs sly and sage. And although he had a roving eye, he ne'er forgot his age. Come along, along, we'll sing a song, and it isn't very long. Ben Franklin was the gentleman's name, and he made this country strong. Ben Franklin made a pretty kite and flew it in the air to call upon a thunderstorm that happened to be there. And all your humming dynamos and your electric light go back to what Ben Franklin found the day he flew his kite. Come along, along, we'll sing a song, and it isn't very long. Ben Franklin was the gentleman's name, and he made this country strong. Ben Franklin was the sort of man that people like to see, for he was very clever, but as human as could be. He had an eye for pretty girls, a palate for good wine, and all the courts of France were glad to ask him in to dine. Come along, we'll sing a song, and it isn't very long. Ben Franklin was the gentleman's name, and he made this country strong. But it didn't make him stuffy, and he wasn't spoiled by fame, but stayed Ben Franklin to the end, as Yankee as his name. He wrenched their might from tyrants, and it's lightning from the sky. But oh, when he saw pretty girls, he had a taking eye. Come along, along, we'll sing a song, and it isn't very long. Ben Franklin was the gentleman's name, and he made this country strong.
Well, thank you, young ladies of the top 20. I'm sure Ben Franklin would have enjoyed that performance. Now we've got something to show you that's so big we had to mount a camera in the rafters to get it all in. Look at there, a king-size sales chart telling the biggest automotive story of all time, the story of the Ford Falcon. It started in October of '59 when Falcon was introduced. By February of '60, the Falcon had edged ahead. By May, it looked like the Falcon was a sure winner, and by July, it was in the bag. The Falcon was America's best-selling compact car, and today there are over 525,000 happy Falcon owners. And here it comes, the car that won the Battle of the Compacts, the Falcon. Let's look at some of the reasons for the Falcon's success. First, the Falcon gives you a big bonus right off of the bat, because it's America's lowest-priced six-passenger car. It's priced up to $505 less than other compacts with comparable equipment. Yet the Falcon gives you plenty of room inside for 6 adults, just like the highest-priced compacts. And the rear seat is almost a foot wider than another American-made compact that can carry only 5 adults. Here's another big Falcon bonus. A Falcon will deliver up to 30 miles on a gallon of gas. And here's a Falcon bonus, maybe that you just haven't heard anything about. The Falcon's higher resale value. A leading automotive magazine says that the Falcon depreciates as much as $175 less at trade-in time than other compacts in its class. Well, those are just a few of the reasons why the Falcon is America's best-selling car, and why you should look over a Falcon before you buy any car. See it at your Ford dealers, the Falcon.
When you do, then you know why we say you're ahead in a Ford all the way.
In 1861, hurrah, hurrah. When the war begun, hurrah, hurrah. In 1862, both of the sides were falling too. All come marching on. In 1863, hurrah, hurrah. Abe Lincoln set the country free, hurrah, hurrah. In 1863, he made it free for you and me, and we'll all be there when Johnny comes marching home. Marching home. 1864, hurrah, hurrah. Old Abe, he called for thousands more, hurrah, hurrah. In 1865, they talked rebellion, talked of strife, but we'll all be there when Johnny comes marching home. Then thousands left their native home, and many a wife was left to mourn. Until the peace that he foresaw, his speech became the country's law, and we'll all rejoice when Johnny comes marching home. They're bringing his body home tonight. How sad, the sorrow, his soul was taken in the fire. How still. But he died to keep our union free, that we could enjoy democracy, and we'll all give thanks that his truth is marching on. Thank you, and thank you, gentlemen. Actually, the Johnny we just sang about is not any one man in particular. The name is kind of a symbol for all the brave men who fought on both sides of the Civil War. And the towering figure of that time was our great President, Abraham Lincoln, whose dream it was to heal the breach between the North and the South. And of course, right after the war, that's when the country started to grow. A big part of the increasing population started to move west, where men were men and women were women, and you can't beat a setup like that to increase the population. Of course, this new West had its heroes. There was John Henry, Casey Jones, Jesse James. Well, now, in a way, Jesse James was a hero. He was a kind of a Western Robin Hood. He stole from the rich to give to the poor, the rich being the banks and the railroads and the stagecoaches, the poor being his mother, his wife, his brothers, and himself. But they say Jesse was a good man at heart, and he was shot in the back by a dirty coward whose name I regret to say was Robert Ford. No relatives of mine are Henrys. You know, there's a lot of sounds that go with these famous men and the sounds that were put into the songs that were written about them. Here's a sound you might remember. When John Henry was a little baby, sitting on his mammy's knee, he picked up a hammer and a little piece of steel, said, "This hammer gonna be the death of me. Yeah, this hammer gonna be the death of me." When John Henry was a little baby, no bigger than the palm of your hand, his mommy looked down at little Johnny and said, "My Johnny gonna be a steel driving man. Yes, he is. My Johnny gonna be a steel driving man." That was supposed to be the hammer. Remember that? Here's one you might remember. Now, he's in a dog trot now, the horse. Jesse James was a lad who killed many a man. He robbed the Glendale train. He stole from the rich and he gave to the poor. He'd a heart and a hand and a brain. Poor Jesse had a wife to mourn for his life. 3 children, they were brave. But that dirty little coward that shot Mr. Howard and laid poor Jesse in his grave. For it was Robert Ford, that dirty little coward. I wonder how he feels. For he ate of Jesse's bread and he slept in Jesse's bed. Then he laid poor Jesse in his grave. Poor Jesse had a wife to mourn for his life. 3 children, they were brave. But that dirty little coward that shot Mr. Howard and laid poor Jesse in his grave. Whoa. Jesse had a song written about him. Yeah. Here's the sound. That's the way the old trains used to sound. Huh? You remember? Come all you rounders if you want to hear the story about a brave engineer. Casey Jones was the rounder's name. On a 6-8-wheeler boy found his fame. Casey Jones mounted to the cabin. Casey Jones with his orders in his hand. Casey Jones mounted to the cabin, took a farewell trip to the promised land. Casey pulled up that Reno hill. He tooted for the crossing with an awful shrill. The switchman knew by the engine's moan that the man at the throttle was Casey Jones. He pulled up within 2 miles of the place. Number 4 stared him right in the face. He turned to the fireman and said, "Boy, you better jump, 'cause the 2 locomotives that are bound to bump." Casey Jones, 2 locomotives, Casey Jones that are going to bump. Casey Jones, 2 locomotives, that's 2 locomotives that are bound to bump. Casey said that just before he died, "There's 2 more roads that I'd like to ride." The fireman said, "What could that be?" "The Southern Pacific and the Santa Fe." Mrs. Jones sat on her bed a sighing, received a message that Casey was dying, said, "Go to bed, children, and hush your crying, 'cause you got another papa on the Frisco line." Casey Jones got another papa, Mrs. Casey Jones, Salt Lake line. It's Casey Jones got another papa, you got another papa on the Frisco line.
$15.
Say, that's quite a collection of lubrication stickers you have there.
Finest in town.
You sound like you really enjoy getting your car lubricated.
Nah, it's an awful nuisance, and expensive, too. But I figure I may as well have something to show for my money, right?
But you don't have to spend that money anymore.
Yeah, what am I supposed to do, stop driving?
No, start driving a 61 Ford. It's beautifully built to take care of itself.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Look, it'll normally go 30,000 miles without a chassis lubrication.
Hey, yeah, but what happens after that?
That's all it takes. About $4.20 at your Ford dealers. And you're set for another 30,000 miles. During that same period, you could be spending as much as $80 to $100. Well, are you convinced?
I sure am. Would you be interested in buying a nice collection of old lubrication stickers?
Thank you very much. As you know, we like to close our show each week with a song of a spiritual nature. And tonight, in keeping with the theme of our show, we have chosen a song which we feel is a hymn to the bravery and the spirit of the kind of men who helped to make America the free and wonderful country that it is today. We hope you like it. In the southern part of Texas, near the town of San Antone, stands a fortress all in ruins that the weeds have overgrown. Alamo. You may look in vain for crosses, and you'll never find a one, but sometimes between the setting and the rising of the sun, you can hear a ghostly bugle as the men go marching by. You can hear them as they answer to that roll call in the sky. Colonel Travis, Davy Crockett, and 180 more. Captain Dickinson, Jim Bowie, present and accounted for. Back in 1836, Houston said to Travis, get some volunteers and go fortify the Alamo. Well, the men came from Texas and from old Tennessee, and they joined up with Travis just to fight for the right to be free. Injun scouts with squirrel guns, men with muzzle loaders, stood together heel and toe to defend the Alamo. You may never see your loved ones, Travis told them that day. Those who want to can leave now, those who fight to the death, let them stay. An officer on horseback came to tell them to surrender. Travis answered with a shell and a rousing rebel yell. Santa Anna turned scarlet, like a guile he roared. I will give them no quarter, everyone will be put to the sword. 189 brave men holding back 5,000. 5 days, 6 days, 8 days, 10, Travis held and held again. Then he sent for replacements for his wounded and lame. But the troops that were coming never came, never came, never came. Twice he charged and blew recall. On the fatal third time, Santa Anna breached the wall, and he killed them one and all. Now the bugles are silent, and there's rust on each sword, and this small band of soldiers lie asleep in the arms of the Lord.
Colonel Travis, Davy Crockett, Captain Dickinson, Jim Bowie,
and 180 more.
All the men of Alamo. Oh, the 13 days of glory at the siege of Alamo.
Thank you very much. See you next week, and Sherry Lewis will be our guest. See your Ford dealer. Good night.
The Ford Show has been brought to you by Ford, America's station wagon specialists, makers of the only low-priced wagons that normally travel 30,000 miles without a chassis lubrication.
You're ahead in a Ford all the way.
Portions of this program were pre-recorded.